Well, when you think of all-time jobbers in the world of professional wrestling, you think of names like the Brooklyn Brawler. You think of names like Dwayne Gill, right? Gilbert, James Ellsworth. But for me, my all-time favorite jobber has to be Barry Horowitz. Barry Horowitz, as I think Bobby Heenan used to say. Barry Horowitz, a fantastic jobber from my childhood. He was always out there putting over all the top talents, always doing the JOB for the paycheck at the end of the night. And there was never anything more to it. Just Barry Horowitz was just in the rotation of guys that were getting jobbed out, but few did it better than him. That was until the summer of, what was it, 95 maybe, when he got a quick upset victory over Skip of the Body Donnas. Skip and Sonny at the time. Well, I don't think he was in a tag team quite yet. But Skip, Chris Candido, when he debuted with Sonny, it was the Body Donnas, and he had that upset loss to Barry Horowitz. Horowitz just fucking rolled him up, got the 1, 2, 3. I think he rolled him up. I have to go back and watch it, but this was huge when I was a kid. This was a very big storyline when I was a kid. I'd never seen anything like this other than like when the 1, 2, 3 kid beat Razor Ramon. Maybe it was kind of a recreation of that, but it was a little bit different because Chris Candido, Skip, was a little bit more comedic and animated. But this really set Barry Horowitz up on a trajectory that made his career. That to this day, people still remember him as an all-time jobber, and this was why. And to hear the man himself, Barry Horowitz, talk about this angle, check out this clip.
Kevin Nash comes up to me, world champion. He goes, Barry, I'm in some of the meetings, the war room. I said, yeah, I'm going along with this because I was always taught, don't mess up a rib. And I know Kevin, he's ribbing me. He says, you're going over tonight. And he's telling me the gist of the story fastly and whispering it. Oh, wow, cool. In my mind, oh, yeah, right. A couple hours later, there's an open catering. The doors, it's wide open. There's tables, round tables. Hey, Pat wants to talk to you. Okay, it's wide open. Everybody can see us talking there, and it's dim. I sit here. Pat is right there. He says, listen, we're going to do this thing tonight with you and Skip, Chris Candido. He says, if it takes off, we'll prolong it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Pat lays it out. I thank him, and the rest is history.
That was with James over at Wrestling Shoot Interviews, who also does the Story Time with Dutch Mantel. He always has great interviews over there on his YouTube channel. Highly recommend checking him out and checking out more from this interview with Barry Horowitz, as he's very open and opinionated. Very outspoken guy. Doesn't really hold back or pull any punches, but man, he made no bones about it that this absolutely made his career, this angle here. And he had a good fucking run. It only lasted about a year. He didn't become a star or anything. I mean, he is a star, but you get what I'm saying. Like, he did eventually fall back into being a jobber, but that really propelled him. Like he said, he had a Survivor Series team, and he was on the pay-per-view for SummerSlam, and it was very memorable too. To this day, you can only remember a handful, if that, of situations like this. Like I brought up the 1, 2, 3 Kid Razor Ramon situation, but 1, 2, 3 Kid was never really a jobber. I think he was maybe a little bit when he first was brought into WWF, but I don't think he wasn't meant to be. I think the plan all along was to get him that win or whatever, and kind of just make him the light heavyweight kind of guy, because before that he was the Lightning Kid, and he was not a jobber then either. He was the skinny, scrawny Karate Kid guy or whatever, but he was still a formidable opponent, so to speak. He could pick up a win or two here. He wasn't a jobber. Barry Horowitz was a jobber. That was his goal. That was not his goal, but that was his job, I should say. That's nobody's goal is to be a jobber, but Barry Horowitz was one of the best jobbers there ever was, man. That was his role in the company. He was just putting people over, laying on his back, looking up at the lights, collecting a paycheck, making other people look good. And, he talked about in this interview different people he worked with, who was easy to work with, who was rough with him, who was a dickhead, who wasn't, who took care of him. Really fun interview. But, man, this angle with Skip, when he got that win over Skip, and Skip sold it like $1 million, he was all upset and in shock and embarrassed. And it built into that angle where, okay, you got a lucky fluke win, but now I'm really going to beat you at SummerSlam. Worth going back and watching. That era, too, did not produce, it was not highly thought of in the history of pro wrestling, that new generation era, so to speak, where WWF was transitioning out of the Hulk Hogan era to the Diesels and the Shawn Michaels and the Bret Harts and that sort of thing. And that new generation in between the 80s and the Attitude Era was really kind of a weak point for the WWF. It really was. And then, eventually the NWO came along and WCW, which kickstarted the Attitude Era with the DX and all of that too. And wrestling took off again. But before that, it was barely hanging on. That was the time where they had to take the water coolers out. We've all heard that story, that kind of thing, But there were few angles, few things, few and far between good memories from that era. But by God, Barry Horowitz getting the one-up on Skip out of nowhere, just the jobber guy who gets the fluke surprise win, shocked the crowd, a fun storyline, and very memorable, which makes us all remember Barry Horowitz to this day. And, of course, the old pat on the back. What are your thoughts? Let me know down in the comments below if you're a Barry Horowitz fan, if you remember this angle fondly. And if you don't remember it, go seek it out, because this was definitely a good one from that era. Let me tell you something, brother. You can check out full episodes each and every Sunday right here on this channel, dude. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to take your vitamins and say your prayers, brother.